What's up, beautiful people? I'm Nathaniel Pearl,
And I'm Sammy Sheva.
and welcome to Curious Chimps Podcast, a show where we explore the infinite complexities of the human experience.
We do not endorse anything illegal, so please consult doctors, do your research, and for the love of all that is holy, be safe. All right, let's talk about drugs.
Curious Chimps.
Anyway, well, funny topic though, because my real name's Alexander. My mom just calls me Sammy, and it's been like that my whole life. It's not on my birth certificate. It's like a strong nickname that's just kind of stuck with me, which I find out means like elevated. So it's
you think Sammy means elevated?
something like that, yeah.
Okay, because Alexander is my second name, and it means, I love that name as well. It means helper of men. It's a very powerful name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a big shoes to fill for sure.
Helper of men.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. Yeah, that's
Help protector or something like that, yeah.
Mhm.
I always hear that. But we were wondering, because I knew you as Nick Gabriel, and then I see you have like a different last name or something. Is there like a story to that, or is it
Sure.
like
Yeah. So yeah, Nick Gabriel was just basically, I don't want, stage name was probably not the right expression, but when I started the London Real project with at the time my partner on that, Brian Rose, I just wanted a fresh start, because like using an assumed name, you can kind of push the boat out a little bit, like there's no baggage, and it's also, I don't want to say you can hide behind it a little bit, but it's a kind of a little bit of a filter between yourself and the rest of the world. And I really wanted to take London Real in a specific direction that was built around authenticity and how do I put it? Like, I just wanted to do some crazy stuff. I wanted to really like push the limits of what I could as a human being. So that's why I thought, like, might as well use like a different name, fresh start.
Interesting. And then I guess now it's back to, how do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, so it's Gregoriades.
Gregoriades. Okay.
Gregoriades, yeah. It's a tough one, man. I tell you guys, I got so much shit growing up with that name in South Africa as well, because like it was very unusual to have a European sounding surname like that. So people just didn't know what to do with it. They couldn't process it, It was wild.
I just wanted to say briefly, going on your journey from when you started London Real, when you were in the beginning stages of with Brian, when you're looking into the psychedelic realm and you're looking about just getting into it and reading Terence McKenna, seeing Dennis McKenna, and seeing all these guys, and you're looking at these names, I have to give you some credit, because the beginning of my journey was a lot about that podcast where you guys spoke about your first ayahuasca experience, and I know it's not you to thank, but the message kind of transferred through you to me, and I just want to give you appreciation for you being so vulnerable and expressing your journey, because that started my journey. And then,
Wow.
Yeah, man. So I want to put that out
It's
there.
a great compliment, brother. Yeah. I still to this day, that was almost 8 years ago, but to this day, I still get messages from people saying I watched that and it was moving. And it was, the weirdest thing is, like, it was a truly extraordinary experience. That fucking Peru 2012 end of the mind calendar ayahuasca ceremony. That was really like, I have not been the same. I often tell people my life is divided into two sections. It's before that and after that. And when I came back to London and I was going to go, and Brian and I were going to talk about it, I knew it was going to be an important message to get out there. Something just told me, in life, when you have that instinct that, something is going to really connect with people or resonate with people, and it needs to be shared.
Yeah.
And I was right. Like it really, something flowed through me in that, and it's helped some people. So I'm really happy about that, Nathaniel. Thanks for letting me know.
Oh man, thank you, and thank you to the mother plant that finds its way to give its message to everyone, which is, well, I mean, everyone who's looking, but it's a humbling teacher.
It really is, man. It really is.
Yeah.
I've only done one ceremony, and Nate's kind of like the father of my experience. So you're kind of like the grandfather of my experience.
Nice. I love it. That's cool. When are you guys? When are you gonna do your next one, Sammy?
I actually was just about to message someone a couple days ago, and I've been kind of hesitating. It might be in a month or two, but it's I jump back and forth a lot between, do I really need to do this? There's a lot of information I have. I need to integrate. I need to apply. I think this might take a few months, but it might take a few years. There's so much I have to work with, so much intellectualization that I can turn into experience. And it's a slow trickle for me because it's all been up here for so much of my life. And at the same time, I hear Nate's voice, or I just hear this kind of like, for better or worse, like a different voice saying, like, just go for it, man. You know, the set and setting, that ceremony is very powerful. Even if I decide not to drink, it's a beautiful place to be, and a powerful thing to promote, or to what's the word, like, to like they deserve every penny, they deserve anything I can give to them. They deserve it. So I
cool.
feel like there's no harm. So
Yeah, agreed. And also, I really love that image you created of you have all this intellectualization that has to trickle through into experience. And if we use the analogy of, it's not the best analogy, but it's probably the best one we have, of how your brain is the analogous to the computer hardware, and the thoughts, or the language, the thoughts, and all your experiences are kind of like the software that it's running on. The thing that I've noticed plant medicine does is that, especially if you're someone like yourself, who I presume takes in a lot of content and reads a lot and is constantly studying, and your hard drive can get cluttered, right? And then plant medicine kind of acts as a defrag, and to me, that's one of its most powerful features. So yeah, man, I reckon just go for it. Don't think twice, just do it.
That's what I've been saying.
Defrag the hard drive.
I love that point you just said about defragmentation, because that was my first ceremony. We're going back to 2017, I believe. When I was finally looking for ayahuasca for so long, I was planning a trip to Peru, and luckily we found the most incredible place in our local area. I'm not going to out them too much, but it's not too far to travel, which was incredible. And I remember we did 2-night ceremonies, and the first night was all cerebral, and it was just like laying out everything in my life in front of me to kind of pick at and understand and untangle all these knots that I've had for years. And it was so psychological, I wasn't expecting that. And then the second night was only physical, so it was like literally divided the mind and body separately. And that was, it was like the first night was defragment the mind, and then the second night was fix the body. So it was just like maybe 5 hours of purging.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love that you used the word untangling, because to me that was it's the funniest thing. I went home to South Africa about, I think it was 3 years ago. I was there for the summer, and every time I go home, there's a kind of a theme to me. Like there's something that I've got to go home to do, and on that theme, I remember there were these things in my mind that I wanted to get right about, who I was and my upbringing. And I remember I do kiteboarding, or kite surfing, some people call it, and I hadn't done it for a while, and I laid out the lines on the beach. It was time to go. The wind was blowing, and I remember I was laying out these lines, and then they were all tangled up, and I was standing there like untangling them. And I remember I just burst, like I had this understanding, okay, that's what I'm here to do on this trip, is just untangle these psychological kind of, I don't want to say issues, but yeah, just get my psyche kind of untangled. And to me, I really appreciate that you think about it in the same way.
Yeah, man, it's what it does. And what I realized is, because when I had that visual layout of my life, it was showing, it looked like vines, like I was looking at my life like as if it was a giant tree of life. And all the branches were moments in my life that stem from one branch to another that leads on to where I am right now. And then when I started going closer towards each branch, I started seeing knots, like branches getting stuck together. And those were patterns that maybe were formed at a younger age, that were negative patterns used for suppression that carried on my whole life. So it was such an insane experience, seeing each thing and be like, oh my God, I've been operating on this pattern up until now without even realizing it. So the mother plant, ayahuasca, just started untangling each one. And some of it was painful, like some of it you're like, holy shit, hold on. But you just trust the experience. And then it just there's still knots to untangle, but it really,
Sure.
it started the
It
process.
just blows my mind to think of like, so what you've just described to me, you know, we all have these knots, all of us, right? No matter how spiritually evolved or how much work you do on yourself, like everyone has those knots. And yeah, they are painful to unravel sometimes, but just the thought of having them, you know, like for me, if I know they're in there, I want them out, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't want knots in my psyche. I want my psyche to be functioning efficiently or functioning at its peak, like everything else in my life. I want the best possible experience, right? So when you know, there's people in the world that will hear this discussion and they will still not want to do ayahuasca. And to me, like after hearing that, how could you not want to do it? How could you not want to have those knots untangled?
Yeah.
That's
It's
a good point. Yeah.
it's fear. It's terrifying to look inward sometimes, especially if there's things you've been covering up and you might not even know it at the conscious level what you're hiding. But there's just like this gut-wrenching fear. And I've had it too. There was moments in ceremony where it was really terrified to go, but I knew the more scared I was is the more I needed it.
Sure.
You know?
That's a good one. Yeah. I honestly, like, I had experiences with other psychedelics, and I think that gave me more fear because something like mushrooms or salvia can be, like, I call it a washing machine, and it can be kind of like intense and exhausting. And maybe ayahuasca has a bit of that, but it seems like the experiences vary so much from one experience, from one ceremony to the other, from one person to the other. And then when Nate told me, because he has done a bunch of them and I only went once, and the resistance I had the first time and the resistance I still have now, he told me, to my surprise, I still get scared. I'm still scared. Like, it's as if it's the first time. You just never know what you're walking into. And it's just like, I guess I was just being naive. It was funny. It was like cute in retrospect to think like I gave him this credit, like something I'm not capable of, you know, like he has this fearlessness, like he's just like done so much inner work. And it's like, no, he just knows that it's beneficial. And it's like it's maybe as simple as a cold shower. It's like, it's not going to be fun, but it kind of is fun. It kind of gives you this reward after. There's this thing on the other side. And it's like we talked about intellectual as opposed to experience. Like you just do it. And I have to say, actually, I wanted to ask you before as well. Like, I had a very good experience and I feel like I undid a lot, and a lot of it just kind of comes back in an instant, but there was this momentum, you know. I had this like seat that I didn't have before, this comfortable ability to observe. I had like this something relaxing, you know, had developed, and I felt like it was a lot of momentum that I may have wasted a little bit, but I won't next time because I went through it. But you were talking about how you had one specific experience, and you can say that it's kind of like a turning of the page, like you really felt this chapter shifting. And I've never had that in my life, in my entire life. I've always felt this continuity of myself, and I would just love for you to expand on that and maybe tell me if there's like a formula to that, or does it just kind of bonk you on the head? Like, I feel like it's impossible for me. I feel like it's never going to come.
Yeah, so the first thing is drink more is what came to my mind. Drink more ayahuasca. The thing that happened to me was, you know, we did it at this place in Peru. And I had done ayahuasca once before in London in a very small private ceremony with actually just me and Brian Rose, and that was, you know, it was an interesting experience, and it definitely did some stuff, and I definitely. I don't want to say it was hugely profound, but it was a good experience, right? And it started to open my mind to certain things. And then when I went to Peru, I mean, it was like a level, several orders of magnitude more intense, because the actual mixture that this guy was making out there, it was no joke, right? And also he was quite an intense individual who kind of, his whole thing was, we've got to go through the darkness to get to the light. That was his prime directive, right? Is, you know, this is not an airy fairy, like light and love type experience. It's like, let's fucking go down into the depths of hell to fucking rescue you and then bring you back out into the light. So that combined with the fact that his actual mixture was very potent as well. I mean, I found out at the end, or not at the end, a few weeks later, that his mixture had datura in it, right? Which is it's poison. It's a fucking poison, right? It's a very strong poison that I mean, it causes you to black out, and it fucking causes you to have total loss of your like discombobulation, loss of your muscular system, and it really did that, you know. Like the final night, even on the first night, I was fucking at the end of the ceremony, I was lying in a heap on the floor, just kind of just out of it. But the final night was so powerful for me because I took a double dose, and I also, going into it, I was like, this is the big one. I mean, I remember I was terrified. I was, the whole day before, I was like, this is first of all, it was December 22nd, 2012, so it was the end, literally the end of the Mayan calendar.
It's the day after.
I kind of, yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to, or I'm inclined to believe, because of the nature of the kind of person I am, that there was a meaning behind that. You know, there was something to that, some kind of power, or some kind of interdimensional portal was opened, or there was some kind of, the veil between the worlds was especially thin on that night.
Wow.
But also, we'd been drinking ayahuasca for like 10 days leading up to this, getting ready for this ceremony. And we'd been dieting, and we're probably a little bit malnourished at this point, you know, so your brain chemistry starting to get a little bit wonky. But I also knew, I just fucking had this instinct. I remember the whole day, like we all were told to, okay, tonight's the last ceremony, it's a special one, go spend some time on your own. And I remember, like, I was, you know, I took that to heart, and I went and meditated down by the river. And I remember I was terrified. I was like, this is going to be a fucking big one. Like, I don't know what's coming, but this is it. I just knew it. And then in the ceremony, like, truth be told, I don't even really remember that much of what happened, but I went so far beyond my normal state of consciousness that there's a mystic slash magician, some people would call him, called Gordon White. He's written several books, and he's a very intelligent man. You can find several of his podcasts online, and he says, you know, if you want to get the most out of life, you have to have this experience of what he calls becoming invincible, right? And now it's very important that this isn't confused with the egoic idea of I'm invincible, like no one can beat me. It's not that. What this experience, the becoming invincible experience, is basically just showing you that there is more to just life than your physicality, right? There's something more. And to me, that was that invincible experience for me. Like, it took me so far beyond what it is to be a normal human being, and in control of your senses, and understanding language, and knowing what the sun is, and knowing what the ground is, and just having all these reference points of what it means to be human, that the human experience, I can never look at it in the same way again, for two reasons. The first is that I can never take it as seriously as I used to take it, because I know it's not all there is to it. Yeah. And then secondly, I also really, really fucking appreciate it, right? I appreciate what it means to be human. So for me, it was just a hugely profound experience. And I hope you have one of that magnitude, Sammy, because life's definitely been better since then.
Yeah, man.
I think that's what I need. I've heard, you're echoing something I've heard a couple of times, and lately also. So it's almost like the synchronicity is like building up. And Nate's actually talked about something similar. And I see something not so poetically, like in the eyes or something, but like in the action, and in the way these people are living their life. You guys, the way you're living your lives with this extra, like, I don't give a fuck, but like I give a fuck, but I don't give a fuck what happens. Like, I'm going to give it my all because I know it's fleeting, but I've touched or experienced something immortal, if you will, or like, sure. I don't, yeah, and I haven't. So for you to say, and for Nate to say, and for a handful of other people in my life to say, I know there's something more than this. I don't know shit, bro. Yeah. I don't know. I'm like a professional doubter. I just have this way of breaking everything down. And the what's his name? Sadhguru. He says the intellect is like a knife, and in your it's only good to cut things, you know, to dissect things.
I love that.
It's a great point. It really resonated with me. I don't know how to get away from that because I feel like I'm standing behind the knife. I feel like I am the knife in a way.
Sure.
But
That's
it's
something my wife and we, I don't want to say we disagree, but we have, yeah, we have disagreements. It never devolves into an argument. We just have discourses on, like for me, science. She always says to me, "Oh, you don't believe in science," and I get kind of pissed off because I totally believe in science. When I get on a plane to fly across the country, I know it's engineering that and science that means I'm going to most likely arrive at my destination. And I use science in my physical training, and I understand certain sport elements of sports science and how to train. And I know that this computer we're speaking on is science is the underpinning of it all, right? Like I'm a huge proponent of science, and I think that it's done wonders for human beings. But also that line you just said to me, that the intellect is only good for one thing, and that's cutting things. It's a similar thing with science. The intellect and science are so inextricably linked, and you get certain people who can't go beyond that. They cannot just say, okay, science and that method of looking at the world is a tool, and it's one lens that I can view the world through, right? And for them, that becomes the only lens. But there's many ways to experience the world and engage with the world. And I really believe that the most actualized human beings are able to use multiple of those lenses, right? So I think for you, once you have that becoming invincible experience, everything will change, and you'll be able to say, okay, now I'm looking with the eyes of science, or I'm looking with the intellect, or I'm cutting, or I'm demarcating and compartmentalizing. But you'll also be able to shift into the other mode where you just know, fuck, there's something behind all of this, an energy, a spirit, like a power that I cannot put into a box. It's bigger than that, right? And to me, that's the sign of, when I talk to people on that level, that's when it gets interesting for me. Not just the crazy hippies who are only connected to the, like the source, right? And not just the Richard Dawkins characters who are like, so fucking scientifically minded and rational thinking. It's when you find the nexus point of those two that I really believe you have the truly actualized human being, and the person who can have the really fucking cool conversations. So hopefully you're going to get there very soon. Yeah.
I wonder, me and Nate were talking about it just before you stepped into the conversation, but like, I wonder if we can get there without something like ayahuasca. I mean, if it works and if it's healthy and beautiful and all of these good things, and even there's a huge community aspect to it, or just like a human kind of tribalistic benefits, if you will, like, is there even a need for this question? Like, if ayahuasca can get me there, should I just go with ayahuasca? Like, are there other plant medicines that you're a proponent of, or can I just meditate myself into this understanding?
I think you could just I think you could definitely meditate. And meditation is probably, I don't want to say the better way of doing it, but the more traditional. Yeah, there's many other ways. I mean, you go and do a Vipassana retreat, like a silent meditation, you can get to that point as well, right? Like, to me, ayahuasca is just a pretty fast road, and a pretty, I know it's effective and like it works for pretty much everyone if they take a strong enough dose. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think that even reading certain things and even being given fresh perspectives is often enough to open or unlock that ability, or that or give you the ability to use that lens in your mind. So sometimes that's why people can be enlightened just being around a master, right? Osho would say to his students, just by being in my presence, not even listening to what I say, just by being in my presence, I will transform your consciousness, right? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I can pick up a book, and after reading that book, my experience of the world is totally different. It's changed my perspectives and my perception. So I think, like, no, you don't need ayahuasca, but man, it's such a powerful tool. Why not use it if you have it at your disposal, right?
And yeah, I would love to add to that also in our current state as a society, as a global society, is that we are super disconnected with ourselves and in our souls. And ayahuasca is really a guide that, yeah, the meditation route can work, but I think it's like we have a sickness for the most part, not everyone, but collectively we're living in a sick society, and this is the medicine for that solution. we need, it's not that we can progress there in 20, 30 years, 40 years of practice meditation, but I think we all need to kind of open that gate again and reconnect with soul and self, because it's so lost right now, and you see it in what's manifesting into reality, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes, there's someone wrote, I can't remember who it was, but they said ayahuasca is like using a crowbar to open your third eye, right? And sometimes you fucking need the crowbar, right? Some of us are so lost in our ego, but also in the narrative that the modern Western industrialized world puts out. And I want to make it clear that I'm not knocking modern life. I think it has a load of positive things, and I don't want to go fucking live in the jungle and like use leaves to wipe my ass and all. Like I love modern life. It's great, but it's come with certain drawbacks, like you said. A lot of us are very disconnected, and if there's a tool that can just fucking snap you out of that disconnection, like ayahuasca, fucking, I'm all for it. Why would you limit yourself?
Yeah, good point.
And it's funny you mentioned Vipassana, because we've both done Vipassana, and I remember it does bring you to that state, but look what you have to do to get there, and not everyone's willing to commit a 10-day, or I did a 10-day, for example, but I know there's 40 days and there's even longer, where not everyone's willing to just put their life on hold for that period of time and be silent and really just experience it, But if you decide,
they can't even sometimes.
Yeah. But if you decide to do a Vipassana, it definitely can get you to those kind of states, which is, it's also kind of mind-blowing that just sitting in silence for 8 to 10 hours a day will unlock something so deep inside, And
to be honest, like what I've realized is that sitting in silence for 5 minutes a day can do it, right? All you need is that one little taste, that one little experience of, okay, I'm not my thoughts, right? There's like an energy, there's a source out there, like that's greater than me, and you connect with it once, you open that window just a crack, and then the process starts, right? Like, so I mean, to anyone listening, I would say, if this is the kind of thing that interests you, it can be kind of overwhelming to think, okay, I've got to go to Peru and fucking drink the Datura-laced ayahuasca to get to that state, or I've got to go and sit in a yoga posture for 12 days and not speak in a silent meditation. You don't, right? You don't. Like, start with little steps, right? And don't get me wrong, if you can do those things, great, you'll just speed up the process. But even just 15-20 minutes of meditation a day, or just starting with these little steps, and you'll get there for sure.
Yeah, man.
It sounds like a breakup a little bit. Like a couple months ago, my girlfriend broke up with me, and it's like I have this comparison where at first you just kind of see the pain. Like when I did my first ayahuasca ceremony, it was intense, but it was a very good set and setting, and I just felt able to kind of express that I felt this lighter ability to sit and to be in presence, and to just, it was beautiful, and I was excited about it. I'm sure you know what I mean. And then there was this kind of depression after, because the truth hit me that I've been treating myself a certain way for a long time, and because I had this presence, I couldn't run away from it anymore. And it took time. But like when you said the word crack, like you get these things that crack you open. Those are painful moments, but once it's open, and you get these additions, these bricks. It could be Vipassana. Whatever I did before Vipassana helped Vipassana become deeper. I'm sure Vipassana helped the ayahuasca ceremony integrate itself deeper into me. And sometimes it takes moments, sometimes it takes months or years, but there's something to be gained, maybe no matter what you do, just because you're kind of pointing towards trying to awaken. Even if you're not sure what you're reaching for, you're just trying to kind of wake up. And I don't know, I'm starting to take comfort in that, into just being like, I'm trying, let's see what happens, and I'm getting the fruits. I think that's what's helping me be in that comfort, is to say, I can practice for 5 minutes a day, and the consistency becomes the strength instead of these shocking moments. I don't need to dunk myself in the lava, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a completely unrelated, well, I guess no, it's a totally related topic in a way. With me, each year I kind of pick a couple of themes that I used to set goals, right? And I still kind of set goals, but I don't beat myself up over them as I used to, right? Like I just found that it wasn't really working for me to be so strict with myself and hard on myself with regards to a certain set of goals. So now instead what I do is each year is I pick a couple of themes that I want to try to embody and internalize, right? And express. And my theme for this year, I've mentioned this on my own show, is consistency beats intensity, right? And I see that in business especially, and with with my different business projects, we have this tendency to want to do like, pull 20-hour days for like, and then do that for a month, right? Which is great. But if you operate at that level of intensity, sure, you often get a lot of things done, but you burn out very quickly. Like you crash, you go up and you crash and burn, right? And so for me, like one of the things I'm doing now is just sticking to this idea of consistent daily action in smaller quantities, and I don't burn out, but over a period of time, a lot gets accomplished. So I think, Sammy, with you, just keep doing what you're doing, keep meditating, keep taking positive steps to become the person you want to be. And then, like the Japanese call it kaizen, right? Continual daily improvement results in massive change. One day you'll just wake up and you'll be that person you want to be, right?
Like a type of sadhana, like just taking a daily approach, changing my life, really waking up and doing the things, even though it's not intense. It's funny that you put it in that context. I think a lot of people are familiar with this, like marathon versus a sprint idea, even though it might be hard to do in practice, because we get this insecurity and we try to extend ourselves because we can smell the victory, sort of.
Sure.
But at the same time, I feel like there would be a benefit, like going back to something like ayahuasca. If I were to do a couple of ceremonies in 1 month, or in like a shorter period of time, instead of waiting months or maybe even years in between ceremonies, I feel like there'd be a compounding effect. I feel like
Definitely.
I would be maybe exhausted or something, but there would be in physics, they talk about how, like the boiling point of water is 100 degrees, but it actually needs to go a little bit hotter than that. You can bring it back down and it'll still be boiling, but it needs to get over a certain energy level to break into that new state. And I feel like that applies with me, with people.
That makes total sense. Yeah, there's something I've been noticing as well is so it's an interplay of these two ideas, right? The consistency, but there also needs to be periods of intensity, right? So but it's like human beings, I think one of the big mistakes that I made is we're trained that it's got to be work. But that's not how it works in nature. Nature is alternating periods of work and rest, right? Work and rest. The wolf chases down its prey and then it rests for a day or two and then it chases down prey again, right? So like these things, again, it's one of the most important things I ever learned is that the sign of a powerful mind is the ability to hold diametrically opposed views at the same time, or diametrically opposed ideas or paradoxical ideas. So there is this paradox that exists that you're going to need to take consistent daily action in small doses, but you're also going to need the fucking intensity every now and then, right? Like, and only you will be able to understand at which point or how you need to. Sorry, guys, I'm losing my thought here, but only you will understand how that interplay works best for you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely,
totally. Yeah.
I use this example in an old podcast we did together, but we repeat ourselves all the time. But it warrants to be said again. I use the stock market as an example for how consistency works, and it does its peaks. But it's like, just take Apple as an example. If you look at the 10-year chart, it's a little wobbly, but it goes in pretty much a straight line up. But then when you zoom into the 5-year, it gets a little bit more volatile. Then to the 2-year, it's a little bit crazier. And then if you zoom into the 1 week, it almost looks like a penny stock. And then it just, so from the zooming in, it looks chaos. There's ups and downs. It's like this. But as you zoom out, you realize, holy fuck, this is going on this direction upwards. And that's how you can apply it to your life, man. It's just, there'll be moments where we do fucking amazing, then we burn out or get super tired and we take 2 days off and then we go back into it and then we do half as much as we did last time and then more. But if you're,
as long as the general trend is up, right?
That's it. Exactly, man. You know,
Yeah, I
and
love that. That's really cool.
and it's amazing. You see these examples in everything that you look at that's successful. You look, and nature is, like you said, is one of the most. It's school in front of us. You can learn so much just from looking at nature and how it functions.
Sure. Yeah. I had the thought while you were saying that is nature operates on this, on seasonality, right? And human beings, especially with the way we're trained, you go to a job, there's no seasons in your job, right? Like think of a guy an average dude in a corporate job. Sure, he has a holiday at the end of the year for like a week, but otherwise it's go, 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 like non-stop driving. And that's, to me, it just doesn't make sense anymore. I'm reading a fucking amazing book. It's one of those, well, every now and then a book comes around and you read this thing and you're just like, I'm not the same person anymore. I cannot look at the world in the same way. And this book is called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And in it, he uses that seasons analogy a lot, right? It's to say sometimes it's a season for harvest, sometimes it's a season for sowing the seeds, sometimes it's a season for rest. And as human beings, I think we really need to internalize that and understand that.
Fuck, man, it's so true. That's so true. And
that's a good book, guys. I cannot recommend that book enough. Necessary Endings.
You wrote it down.
I read that book when I was 20.
Sammy just wrote it down.
Yeah, that's cool. Let me know how it goes, Sammy. I think you'll like it.
I'm very curious because I mean, personally, I have like a kind of 9 to 5 on the side, and already I have this mentality. It is on the side. This is something that brings me so much more passion and joy, something that kind of comes more effortlessly. And then suddenly I might have, it's like semi part-time. I might have 3 days off. I can take this kind of rest and go to ground, but then I might have 6 days of work coming up because it just has to be done. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And even though there's study after study about how, a 30-hour week might be better for most people's health.
Yeah.
If someone has
productivity
the option,
as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some people can do and want to do a 60-hour work week, and other people fucking need like if I could work 6 hours a day instead of 8, those last 2 hours kill me. And it's not the end of the world the first time, the second time, but it compounds. Like you were saying about having this kind of Christmas break and then just kind of getting back to work. It might not even be a hard job, but it's this lack of option that starts chipping away at your resolve, at your humanity almost. You start feeling like you're just a piece of the wall, like Pink Floyd would say. And it's like it's not just crushing in a physical way, but in like an existential way. You start believing that you're tired, that you need to get away. It's not just a physical reaction. It's like it just sucks, like in a deeper sense. And
the crazy thing is that the people you work for, it's all born out of one simple understanding, and that is that it's a classic human misconception. We believe always more is better. More is better. So if this guy's at the office for 6 hours, it'll be better for him to be there for 8, right? But the truth is, I'm sure, hopefully they don't watch this, but if you're honest with yourself and them, that last 2 hours is not very productive at all, right? Like your productivity just probably tanks then because you're tired and you're burnt out and you're like, and so like if they were smart, they would say to you, look, I don't care how fucking long you work, right? You can work 4 hours as long as you get the shit done that I need you to get done, right? Like I have several virtual staff that work for me, and I say that to them, like, I don't give a fuck. Like you can work 20 minutes a day if you can get the shit done. But if it takes you 10, I don't care, right? Because to me, it just makes more sense, right? Like it's just a smarter way to, I don't know. It's just me.
I don't know. I think a lot of people agree with you. I think even like the science is out. That's why it's so frustrating for me. And I would say just with my life, my experience, my personality type, my physiology, if I had 6-hour days, I would work 7 days a week, no problem. Like that might sound crazy to someone else, but honestly, 6-hour days are a dream for me. And as soon as you get those extra 2 hours, like I said, it builds up, and it's whether they know it or not. And I'm sure they do. It would cost them money to do a pilot project to see if it's worth it, to see, and then they'd have to make some kind of scheduling program changing so that someone who wants to do more hours can pick up the slack. it's a big change. It's a shift. It's like a paradigm shift. You know, it's essentially it's down to dollars at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I know what I got into, so I can't really blame them. But and honestly, it's the best job I ever had. But it's at the same time, I feel like I have Stockholm syndrome sometimes, and I just tell myself. So I don't know what to do with that. I just
get
try
it.
to look at it as a fun challenge and as like a spiritual challenge, and it's a platform, it's a stepping stone. You know, there's always a better way. Essentially, I think you might relate with this. What we're kind of getting at is that we can be idealists. You know, we can look at new information and say, oh, there's a better way. Why don't we implement it immediately? And it's you know, capitalism is like molasses. You know, like things need money for everything. Everything needs money, and change even needs money now. And so there's no incentive to change. And I mean, the whole coronavirus thing is a good example of that, because a lot of people said this was coming, and then suddenly the experts were right, and it's like, well, fuck you, we don't care that the experts were right. We're wondering, why didn't you listen to the experts in the first place? And the answer is, it would have cost money. Now it's costing you more money, but you were just crossing your fingers that you never had to spend that money. And it's not ignorance, or I guess it's a type of ignorance, but it's really like a greed.
No, it's like, so there's a very interesting word that I became familiar with a couple of years ago called nescience.
Oh,
right? So,
yes.
yeah. You're familiar with that word, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nescience, right? Nescience is different to ignorance, because you know that what you're doing is wrong, right? And so I think that plays into it a lot. For me, what came to my mind while you were discussing that is this idea from a woman called Louise Hay. She's passed away now, but she was a spiritual teacher. Which this one little idea really helped me a lot in everything I do. Which she said, whenever there's a problem, there's not something to be done. There's something to be understood, right? And I think what happens often is we think, especially as men, whenever something comes up, the solution is to throw more action or more time at it. But sometimes the solution is to just literally change your perception by getting new information and having a new understanding, right? So if I look at my business and there's a kind of a breakdown somewhere in a certain system, or something isn't working, I don't take action, right? Eventually I take action, but the first thing is I'm always asking that question: what needs to be understood in the situation? Well, or if I put on weight, right? I don't just go and start exercising, right? Because I first stop and go like, okay, what needs to be understood? Why have I put on weight? Like, is there something changed in my diet? Is there a spiritual cause to this? Is there what, you know what I mean? I first seek understanding and then take action, right? And I think a lot of people get it the opposite way around. They take action first and then they try to figure out what the fuck's going on.
100%. I see that everywhere. I see that even in my life in some aspects, you know?
Yeah.
It's for the smartest approach is to stop, observe, and really find out what's the cause. Otherwise, you're just treating a symptom, you know? That's
reassessing.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you're talking about taking responsibility. Like someone wants to fix the problem immediately, but that's like a fear or ego response. Whereas if you actually say, okay, like I was talking to a friend recently, and he's a wise guy, man. We had him on the podcast, my friend Johnny, and he said everything is 80-20. If you get hit by a car, it's 80% the driver's fault, but it's 20% your fault. That's an extreme case, but it's to say that there's a lot of responsibility that we can take in anything that's happening in our lives. And it seems like kind of what you're getting at is like, nothing is a problem in this kind of victim sense where it needs to be fixed, or it's antagonistic to your goals. It's really just learning opportunity after learning opportunity, which can sound a little cliche or cheesy, but it's the fucking truth.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the first thing I do with all of my clients, is, in fact, before they even become clients, when we're having an initial conversation to see if we can work together, the first thing I'm looking to see is, can this guy take personal responsibility, or is he a victim? Is he blaming everyone for his issues? And if that's the thing, in fact, I had a client the other day that I just said to him, I made a mistake. My gut was telling me, this guy, he's not ready for this. And sure enough, when we started working, everything was an excuse why he couldn't do this, or he didn't want to do that. And then I realized that this guy's never going to get where he wants to go because he hasn't yet taken full responsibility, right? So I agree with Johnny's his assessment. Yeah, like we are responsible largely for our experiences, not totally. I don't think it's just cut. There's some people who believe that every single thing that happens to you is based on some kind of energy you're putting out there or something you've done. And I did believe that for a while, and I've kind of dialed it back a little bit. And now I think it's the vast majority of your experience is influenced by things you're putting out. But obviously, certain things are still beyond your control, and there is an interplay between yourself and the environment. It's not just you.
Yeah, a lot of people have twisted a really complex but beautifully simple idea, like karma, like this idea, like they've turned it into a source of guilt. And I have a friend who I mean, I won't call him out, but he knows who he is. And he just, random things can happen to him. And he asks out loud, is this my karma? Do I deserve this? What the fuck? Like it's this why me sensation that he is putting out into the world, and
Hmm.
I'd love to ask you, I guess I'm kind of asking for advice because I am definitely one of these people. I hate to say it, and people like Nate have dragged me out of it, kicking and screaming. People like Johnny, and a lot of my own rock bottoms have forced me to wake the fuck up. But like, what do you do with someone like that, especially someone like you who's so busy and just needs to get things done in their life and have to kind of put those people aside? What do you recommend? What do you hope for someone like that who is just playing the victim?
Sometimes I try to appeal to their sense of rationale or their logical mind. And we all learned in school, or I think most of us learned in school, the idea of the lowest common denominator, right? So to me, and I've seen this in my own life, like I had two falling outs with different business partners, right? And so I realized, okay, there's a pattern starting to emerge. There's a common denominator here, which is me. So I've got to start to ask questions about my own behavior and what I'm putting out and how that influences it. And I think what you'd find with a guy like that is it that kind of thing doesn't just happen. He doesn't just have arguments or fights or with one person, or he doesn't just lose one job. It's definitely a kind of a pattern, right, that starts to appear in his life. And if you say to the dude, hey bro, like, remember the concept of the common denominator in school? Like, you look at all, I mean, but some people are so far gone, they can't even accept that. It blows my mind when everyone knows of like a person in their life who just, everything goes wrong. Everything fucking goes wrong. They fight with people. They're always, the world's against them, right? And then
Yeah.
sometimes, like, you just want to shake them and say, fuck, dude, it's not the world, it's you. It's fucking you who's got the issue. It's you who's attracting all this stuff into your life. It's you who's putting this energy out. It's you who can't hold a job, or you who keeps fighting with people. And I think it's so difficult for some people to hear that and to realize and to shift, like to become the observing ego and realize that it's, and to get outside themselves. And that's another reason I think ayahuasca is so profound, is because people like that, when they take ayahuasca, it allows them to get outside themselves. It allows them to get away from that continual, repetitive, habitual set of thoughts and perspectives that they've been carrying like this weight on them their whole lives. And it suddenly goes, turns the camera around and goes, no, dude, like this is how it really is. So I guess the answer is, yeah, appeal to the sense of rationale, and if that's not enough, then hold them down and pour a strong shot of ayahuasca into their mouth. Right?
It's
Or
I
give them
love
some mushrooms or something.
I love how you paralleled it with ayahuasca, and that was a big vision for me. One of my ceremonies was everything that happens in life. It showed kind of like my decisions going alongside another train of of what's happening, and we're both going together through life. And the most we can do in terms of going through life is resist or accept. And you have to keep going through life where you're going to resist what's happening to you or accept what's happening to you and move forward through it. And it's really those two choices, those two coins that you get to choose. And I see so many people in my circle that just follow the resisting coin and path. And that's where all these negative things are happening, because it's almost like a protective layer that they add on, but it's actually doing more harm than good. And
What you resist persists, right? I
yeah,
love
man,
that expression. What you resist.
I love that.
I had an experience with ayahuasca recently, which is, I think, a very illustrates very well the power of that medicine, and also what Sammy and I were just discussing. one of the reasons I had a business partnership that broke down. And, I think we both played our roles. I assume 50% of the responsibility for that particular failure. And I think my business partner would say he also assumes 50%. But on my part of that 50% was, he was a family man. He had 3 kids and I don't have any children, right? And I could never really see his perspective on how everything he does or everything he did was ultimately to provide for these children and to keep them at a certain level of comfort and keep a roof over their heads. And my life isn't like that, right? Because, it's just, I don't have children. I don't have people dependent on me. And I got a cat 2 years ago. My wife gave me, a year and a half ago, my wife gave me a little kitten for my birthday, right? And I love this cat. I don't want to say it's like my child, but it's the closest thing I have in my life to like a child. And I remember in my last ayahuasca experience, it showed me, like every day, my little cat at a certain time, she comes into my little office and she jumps on the couch and she wants me to play with her, right? And I go and I tickle her and we play these little. It's cool, this little bonding moment we have. And it showed me playing with my cat and showing that bond that was formed, right? And it literally showed me the emotional connection that I have and how much I love that cat and what it means to me and how I'll do anything to protect it. And then it said to me, this is a cat, right? It's not even a child. And think that he has 3 children,
Wow.
right? And the bond that he has with them. And it really helped shift my perspective. And once like Stephen R. Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, this is one of my favorite stories because it changed everything for me, right? He said he was on a train somewhere, and he, on a train, the seats sit opposite, you sit facing the other passengers. And he said he was sitting on this train and sitting opposite him was a man with 2 young boys. And this man was just looking out the window, looking out into space, watching the scenery, just oblivious to everything. And these young kids were jumping on everything, like climbing over the seats, banging stuff. And Stephen Covey was getting pissed off. He was like, fuck, man, I'm trying to work. Like, he's like, this guy has no respect. He says something to the guy. He says, look, can you please keep your kids quiet? Like, this is unacceptable. And the guy like snaps out of his daze and he says, oh, I'm so sorry. Their mother died a week ago and we've just come from their funeral, right? And then he said that lesson for him there was because he knew differently, he thought differently. And because he thought differently, he acted differently, right? And so for me, I think it's really that understanding that you don't have all the information, right? You don't have all the information about life. And so be very careful about when you act and try to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. It's such an important skill. And the problem is with guys like us who are very self-reflexive, right? And very, I don't know if you guys have kids, but I would assume not.
Not yet.
Right? Because you wouldn't have time to be recording a podcast if you did, right?
Definitely not.
I think with guys like us is we're in our own little worlds and it's such an intense personal experience that sometimes it's difficult to get outside yourself. Right? Yeah. Because we're so on our own little mission, right? And kids cures you of that very, very quickly, but it comes with a whole bunch of costs and difficulties, which I personally am not prepared to pay.
Yeah.
And so ayahuasca helped me by giving me that it just shifting me outside myself and saying, okay, look at it from his perspective. This is how he feels. This is what he has to deal with. And that is so powerful and so important. And Sammy, I think that's the solution. However, that person in your life who struggles like that, they have to get to a point where they've been shifted outside themselves, whether it's plant medicine or whether it's someone slapping them across the face and saying, fucking wake up, or whether it's, you know what I mean? They have to get to that point where they get a fresh perspective.
Yeah. You can't show the path. They have to find it, Mm-hmm. You could show doors, but they got to go through the door. And I realized that too through Vipassana. When I came back, I was so excited to tell all my friends, like, oh, you got to do Vipassana. You got to do. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. You can tell them where a destination is, but they got to do the whole path to get there.
Sure. I've got a friend like this guy. Fuck it. I've got loads of friends like this, but this one guy in particular, I know ayahuasca will change this guy's life. It will make him so much happier. It'll make him face certain things that I know he has to face and go through then that are holding him back and that are a weight on him, dragging down his happiness and his enjoyment of being human. And every time I see him, I basically stop short of begging him
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you have no idea what this will do. And then I end up sounding like a crazy fucking Jehovah's Witness going door to door trying to, like, it looks like
feel
I'm
it,
trying
man.
to sell him something. And it's, man, I'm not trying to sell him anything. I just know how much it'll help him. But he has to get, as you said, Nate, he has to get to that point himself.
I know. And it hurts seeing that sometimes because I
It
relate to that
hurts.
story you're saying, man. I see that in one of my friends. But you know what? I realized I was pushing. I was just like, just please. Like, but that's not the solution. It's not the way to go about it. And it sucks. Inside it hurts, but you know, because you know this can alleviate someone from their pain and they're so caught up in their pain. But the
But at
best,
the end of the day, they, like, that's the thing is, like, my best friend, actually, he, for years, I wanted him to try ayahuasca for years. Like, I was like, man, because he was unhappy and miserable for years. And he was resisting, and he had a bunch of beliefs about it that, like, scared him, and he was resisting and resisting. And then one day something happened, like, and he realized he could no longer run from himself. And he called me up and he said, okay, bro, like, there's nowhere else for me to go. I'm out of options. Let me try it. And it helped him hugely.
wow, that's beautiful, man.
Mhm.
It's such a
You gotta-
powerful medicine, you know. And that's what it's called, you know. Some people I tell, oh, it's just drugs. No, it's a medicine. You know, in Peru, it's their national medicine. You know, this has been practiced thousands of years. It's for a reason. It's here for us. It's here to help us.
It makes me want to cry when someone says that it's just drugs. It makes me want to cry. Like, the the powers that be have done such an amazing job at marginalizing any sort of substance that can give you any sort of experience through the war on drugs,
It's insane.
that it's like people have, it's a layer of armor, psychological armor, that I had it as well. Truth be told, mine was a little bit different. Mine was the Christian, like, anything that changes your consciousness is witchcraft or like evil, right? That was the thing I had to break through. But what the average person in a place like the United States or Europe has to break through is the idea that, you know, they have an image in their mind. Drugs are associated with a dude lying in a gutter with a needle in his arm, or, you know, someone drinking too much and hitting his wife, or another guy who develops a weed habit or sniffs too much cocaine off a toilet seat or whatever it is. Like, and so for them, it all just gets lumped into this one thing: drugs. That's drugs, right? And I try to impart to people the understanding. This is, if we can educate people that the experience of going and doing plant medicine, having a ritual, like spending weeks before thinking, how do I need to change my life? What do I need to learn about myself? You know, doing a special diet, then going into this ritual with other people and drinking this special medicine and having this experience that is not easy and it's not recreational, that teaches you about who you are and the mistakes you've made and shows you where you've gone wrong and how you can do things better. And then afterwards, still, like, being focused and concentrated on the integration and how you can take these lessons you've learned and really use them to become a better person and a force for good in the world. That experience is so far from what drugs or what people think drugs are, that it's not, it's almost like they've come from two different dimensions. Like, you cannot even, there's no overlap. There's just no overlap. They're not the same thing. It's like me comparing a motor car and a fucking banana. They're just totally different things, right? And that's our job as people who proponents of the medicine. We have to get that message through to people, and then they can make the decision, right?
And I realized early on, it's not by just saying it; it's by practicing what it's taught you and shooting that out to the world in your day-to-day life. And that's where those people that are super sheltered away from these ideas, they'll start scratching their head, and be like, what are you doing that's different? Because something's obviously working. And then when that question starts getting asked, that's that little light bulb that pops in, and then all of a sudden, you know. And I've seen that happen. Sammy came to ceremony. It's not because of what I've been doing, or maybe it was, I don't know. But it's that light pops in people. You know, the truth wants to come out. You know,
sure.
And the truth
One
is
of
our
my
truth.
mentors, he lives his life by one single expression, right? Which is, it's Latin, fidem vitae vitaro, which means you show your faith through the way you live, right? And that is it, right? Like, you're a calmer, happier person who's more in touch with themselves, who's kinder to people, who creates more good things, puts more good things out in the world. Like, and then people, you're right, they sit up and they're like, okay, that guy's got something.
Yeah.
He's got something, and I'd like that too. And then
That's
if
it.
they talk to you, ask you about it, then you say, okay, yeah, well, this is it.
Yeah, man.
Agreed, mate.
The medicine serves us, and then that's our way to serve back to the medicine by living by what it's teaching. That's beautiful, man. Nick, I want to respect your timeline. it's up to you. We're at the 1 hour mark.
Okay, I can do another 15 to 17 minutes, guys.
I love it.
Cool.
Take it.
We could do another 3 hours if you wanted.
I love what you guys are talking about, because there seems to be this prevailing theme of, I mean, it's almost like we have to respect the person's path, and to ask the question for them, to suppose for them, is almost disrespectful. And for them to live in a certain way, it's easier. It's you take care of yourself, you better yourself, and then you exude this thing, and then the people naturally come to you with the question, and then you may answer. You know, it's the time and place for the question to be answered, because it's being asked in honesty. Whereas it's almost like those Peruvian finger traps, you know. It's like if you try to kind of fuck with it, then you're just stuck. You're not getting anywhere. And the second you let go, it slips off, and you go like, oh shit. It's tough
that.
because it's exciting, because you feel like you find a catalyst or the answer or whatever, and that can be a little assumptive is the word, but it's I mean, I guess we have to learn that too, you know. We've all been there with ayahuasca, with vipassana, with whatever other psychedelic or technique or something. You want the world to do it, and we've talked about it on the podcast. That instinct is another trick for you to stop looking inward. That instinct is another projection outward, so that you don't have to keep working on yourself. Because like you were saying, these drugs, I mean, it is still a molecule, an exogenous molecule, but it's diametrically opposed with something like weed or heroin, because no one's going to binge on ayahuasca. This is going to reveal. It's going to show you stuff. You can't run away from the realities. It shows you that you are a lineage, that you come from the earth, that you have a sense of duty. It's not that you have a duty. You do or you don't based on your understanding. But once you realize that sense of duty is there, and that you want to embody it, that you want to live by it, then you start becoming happier with responsibility. Yeah. That is not what weed shows you. That is not what heroin shows you at all. Sure.
You know,
interesting. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting idea, Sammy, that you just shared with me, that instinct to evangelize an experience actually is not necessary, is a sign that you haven't really, or partly haven't taken on board the teaching for yourself. And I really need to incorporate that for myself, because I'm constantly trying to get people to drink ayahuasca, constantly. And it's worked a couple of times, right? And but generally, I mean, human beings, we're kind of stubborn, and we don't like to be pushed. And if you tell someone, oh, you should do this, their general instinct is to like resist against it, right? So I guess it's got to be one of my absolute favorite fables. It's one of Aesop, that Greek philosopher / storyteller. He's got a collection of fables. One of them is this fable of the sun and the wind. So the wind goes to the sun one day and says, he sees a man walking with a coat on, and he says to the sun, I bet you I can get that man to take off his coat before you. So the sun's like, okay, whatever. And then the wind starts howling against the man, and the man just starts tugging his coat tighter and tighter, right? Like, and he won't, the wind can't do it. The man's not going to give up his coat. And then the sun just smiles at the man, gently smiles at him, and the guy gets warm and he takes off his coat, right? And to me, I think that's such a powerful metaphor, understanding for pretty much everything in life. Is very seldom does that, like being that strong wind approach to anything work, like that, like pushing and grinding, and like to me, I've just seen it over and over in my life. Like, sure, there's times when you have to work and you have to grind and you have to hustle, but that spirit, that energy, I think is not as amazing as people make it out to be.
Yeah, like Nate was talking about earlier, the difference between kind of accepting and resisting being like the only real or natural free will that we have. It's funny to think sometimes that the grind can be a form of resistance. It's tough to wrap your head around that, because like you said before, like we've just kind of been trained that more is always better, but we don't realize that we're working with like a kind of natural law or like a finite resource. It depletes.
But sometimes you see, here's again, remember that the sign of a powerful mind is the ability to hold these contradictory or diametrically opposed ideas. And sometimes the grind is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's all about the energy beneath the grind or the actions you're taking. If you're grinding morning to night because you're so excited about your project and you're having fun and you just don't want to stop and you're being driven by this ideal and it's just flowing through you, the grind is the best possible thing. That's the best thing you can happen. But if the grind is driven by another energy, which it is in 95%, or I'd say 99% of the people, which is impatience, right? Or fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then that energy ripples through everything you're doing. One of my absolute favorite understandings was that I came to a couple of years ago is that what is the root of impatience? Do you guys know? Do you have an idea?
The root of impatience. That's a good question.
The root
I'm
of
sure
impatience
we could
is
get
the
there.
fear. Yeah. It's the fear that you won't get what you want. That's the only reason people become impatient is they're worried or they're afraid that they're not going to get what they want. And if you internalize that for a second, just stop for a second and think about that. Whenever you've been impatient in life, it's because underlying that, you're worried that you're not going to get what you want. And that usually keeps you as far from what you want as possible. Like think of women, right? When you get like you meet a great looking woman at the bar and you have this great connection and you really want to sleep with this chick, right? And so you get impatient and you want to make it happen. As soon as because you're worried like, oh, she's going to get away. As soon as that energy enters into it, it's gone. She feels it and it's gone. And life is exactly the same.
So true.
Life is exactly the same.
Yeah.
As soon as you come to something with an energy of impatience or greed or that energy isn't clean, even if you do get it, it will never be rewarding. It'll come with a set of costs that are far greater than the reward. And so for me, my whole thing about the way I move through the world is I'm trying to find the energy within myself and get that energy clean and healthy before I move forwards, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
You're making me think of this meme that I see online. It just circulates every now and then, and it's like, it's more or less, it says, how come every time I'm angry, my shirt gets caught on a doorknob? and it's like, yeah, it's a simple but beautiful, like it's the same thing you're saying. You're putting out this energy, and you're, in a simple way, you're walking fast, you're not paying attention, and then the thing that could annoy you further is created by your already like flowing state of annoyance.
Sure.
It's
I just discussed, funny
hilarious.
enough, I just discussed this on my show yesterday. I had a guy on and he was talking about, he's been spontaneously, or not spontaneously, but he's developed the ability to enter into flow states almost at will. And what I said to him is that I've done it as well, but it's because I actually was entering into the opposite of that, these negative states where my shirt would get caught on the doorknob, right? And I noticed that things like that only happened when I was listening to that monkey mind or chattering or having some sort of negative thought or not present, right? And I really am a big believer that most accidents, physical accidents in the world, happen because of lack of presence. Whenever I stumble or trip or bump into something or cut my finger, invariably it's because I was somewhere else, or I was angry with someone and thinking about what a fucking asshole they were, or I've gone to that place in my mind that causes that thing to perpetuate, right? And so what I realize is that if that exists, if there's a state of mind that can attract all these shitty things to me, there must be a corollary of a positive version of that can attract to me a less frictionless experience and a more flowing nature of way to move through the world. And so everything I'm trying to do is move towards that one and away from the other, right? I don't always get it right, but that's the basis of my work and what I feel I'm here to do.
Fuck yeah, man. It's just a perspective shift. It starts like that, I notice that in my life is if I go down this spiral of self-sabotaging patterns, whether it's diet or lack of training or all that, then everything seems to be just against me. But then if I start changing one thing, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take control of my diet. And then all of a sudden I want to exercise more. And then all of a sudden I'm talking to more motivational type of people and starting to look at more motivational stuff instead of just watching like a mindless TV show. It's just everything starts to form into this lifestyle that it's just because you just tuned your perspective, and the more you follow that perspective, it just magnifies as it gets bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with you, man.
Yeah, man. That I resonate so much with that. That's beautiful.
That's cool. Yeah, I think you guys will really enjoy that episode of the show with my friend Eddie. He goes deep into it, and a lot of what he says makes a lot of sense. And again, it's all tied. It all ties together, like you said, Nate. Like the way to get into those states is to meditate, right? Or do things like ayahuasca or plant medicine that help you unravel the knot that is causing those negative thoughts, right?
Yeah,
to
man.
bring it back to what we spoke about in the beginning. And you know what, guys? I think that might be a good place to end.
It's
for
a
me,
great
'cause
place to end it, man.
what a pleasure speaking to you guys. It's really, I felt the meeting of the minds. That was really cool.
Dude,
Likewise, man. Really appreciate your time.
I just, for
Fucking
me,
enjoy it.
just a surreal moment that looking into this whole path and trying to get deeper into my mind was you were a part of it, and now it's coming kind of like a full circle, but in a different place. So it's appreciate talking to
Yeah.
you, brother.
Appreciate that, guys. Thank you, guys. And I learned something quite a lot from you guys today as well. So I want to thank you both for that.
Sweet, brother. If you just
Yeah,
want to plug in
likewise.
anything where people
Please.
can follow you or anything you're doing, feel free. We'll put it in the description too. But if you want to just link someone to
Sure.
something.
Yeah, guys. So I'm coming out with a book called Aligned, actually. And I'm going to give it out for free on my website. It should be ready within a couple of weeks. So if you go to liberationmentor.com/aligned and just put in your email there, you'll get a copy of the book when it's ready. And also I'll let you know when my new podcast and all my new content comes out. So I guess that's the best place for you to go if you're interested in my work and what I do.
Nice, brother. All right, man.
Cool, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
man.
Take care, brother.
See you
Take care. Have a good one. Peace.